Welcome to ASA Central Line, the official podcast series of the American Society of Anesthesiologists, edited by Dr. Adam Stryker.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Dr. Adam Stryker, host and editor of Central Line. Today's show is sponsored by My Staff Schedule, which is a cloud-based scheduling platform for healthcare organizations. I have the two founders of the company with me today, and they're going to tell me what it's like to be entrepreneurs. One is a CRNA and one is an IT expert, and they're going to share their experience in healthcare with us. I'm excited to welcome them both to the show, and I'd like to introduce them to our listeners, Krista and Ricky Niedermeyer. So Krista and Ricky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Krista, I want to start with you. You're a CRNA, and before we get to the entrepreneurship, do you mind telling us a little bit about your medical background and role? We do this often with our guests on the show just to give our listeners a little bit of a sense of who our guests are and how they got to where they are currently.
Yes, currently I'm a practicing CRNA. I've been the director of anesthesia for the CRNAs for about going on 6 years now. I recently took over the ASC CRNAs for our hospital. I've had to deal with scheduling, putting out fires, taking care of patients, going in and breaks, lunches, making sure everybody's taken care of. And I've had to balance my staff's vacations, their child's baseball games, things like that, just trying to make sure that we have enough staff to cover the cases, but also making sure that the staff has a good work-life balance as well.
Great. And Ricky, your expertise is in IT. What were you doing prior to this?
Prior to this, I was working in IT for a local utility. I recently retired from them and leaning into my staff schedule full time. I was in the development group, wrote enterprise class applications for that group. And it was a wonderful career over the last 15 years, but excited to be moving forward and creating this new business.
Okay, well, your backgrounds are in anesthesiology and IT. How did you bring those two very different things together to start a company?
When I became the director of my department and trying to work on a schedule that had been on paper for many, many years. At first, it started with the 8.5 by 11 paper horizontal, and then we, progressed and got more CRNAs, and it became vertical. And it was just a nightmare. We would have people, double scheduled. We'd be missing a late call number and wouldn't find out about it really until the day of. And so one weekend, I was sitting at our kitchen table trying to work on a block of scheduling, and I had eraser crumbs all over the place and was trying to get this done and trying to focus. And Ricky wanted to go for a walk. And I said, I can't do that. I've got to finish the schedule. And then you said, how much more do you have?
Yeah. So as Krista mentioned, she's at the kitchen table and she's working on her schedule. And I said, well, great. Well, when are you going to be finished? And she said, well, I've got 6 more weeks to do after I finish this 2-week block. And I said, well, how long is that going to take? And she said, it's going to take about 2 hours. So I walked up to the table and looked over her shoulder and I just said, why don't you let me create something for you? I've been in software a long time. And she said, no, this is way too complicated. We use numbers in reverse order and we have lots of rules. And I was kind of thinking, well, computers could do that. That would be. So that kind of ended that conversation there. We never did get to go for a walk that day. She was still working on it with the eraser crumbs peeling off of the table. So the following Monday, since I was IT and it was COVID working remote, I just thought, well, we'll experiment with this and see what we can do. So it took me about a week and I wrote kind of some basic scheduling functionality and then showed that to Krista the following week and just said, hey, I've got something to show you. And of course, like many people in anesthesia, they are working all day, 10, 12-hour days. And she was a new director. She had lots of people pulling at her. And I wanted to, pick a good moment to actually show her something new that might help her. So we did a first demo and I'm like, am I close? Can we move forward with this idea or do we just need to punt? So I showed it to her. And she was not that impressed. She had 3 requests while this 15-minute demo was going on, and I'm trying to show it to her.
They were texted to me.
They were texted to her. So
Yeah.
we're doing this, and she's trying to do her phone and trying to answer these texts. And her staff is just hitting her with requests. So we kind of dropped the demo at that point. I thought, let's go back to the drawing board and let's add the request functionality and the request process into my staff schedule. Then worked on that the following week and said, hey, I got another a demo. We've made some improvements. I want to show it to you. So I showed it to her and I said, let me show you this request process. And, her phone lit up and dinged with a message that said that Sally had created a vacation request. And she said,
Yeah, I said, I love this. We're doing this whether the group wants to or not. And we're going to go into the 21st century
yeah,
and get rid of this paper.
yeah. So it changed from there. That was an instant thing. I thought, we've got something that can help Krista. This is wonderful.
Well, it's a fascinating story, but as is often the case, great inventions, great opportunities, they always come out of necessity, as I think we've all heard. So now that you've gotten to this point, how did it expand? Where did you go from here?
Thank you, Dr. Stryker. That's a great question. So once we kind of got Krista's group settled down and things were going really well, I prompted Krista to ask the doctors in the group. She saw them every day, and I just said, ask them what they're using for their scheduling solution and see if you can help me set up a meeting with them so that I could share the software to see if it could help them as well. So it took a little bit more prompting and some time went on, but I finally got my meeting scheduled. And I remember it very well. It was late in the afternoon after they had come home from work. And I could just tell, they were exhausted. They were going to do this meeting just for Krista, basically, and said, my husband's got this software. He wants to show it to you. Would you just do a virtual meeting with him? And so we started the conversation with, what are you currently using? And how is that working for you? And he said, we have 4 calendars. We have a PTO calendar. We have a call calendar. We have a request calendar and system. And then we also have like an exceptions. And he says, every day we compile all of this information into kind of the daily schedule to figure out who is going to be here and then what they're going to be doing. So after he kind of explained what they were doing, I said, what we're going to do is we're going to combine all of that information into one schedule. My staff schedule can do your PTO calendar. It can do your call schedule. It can do your request. And all that will be combined into one system. And I said, that's going to give you transparency into what's going on. And everybody will have their own access to the system. So at that point in the conversation, which was probably about 10 or 15 minutes, their voices changed. They got more excited in what they were seeing. They asked a lot more questions. And we changed the conversation into how to implement this in their group. And for me, although we hadn't done any work yet, kind of configuring their system, I was like, this has some potential to be a lot more than just a solution for Krista.
Yeah. So then now that you've got the group on board and you're solving even a bigger problem with the larger anesthesiology group, take us through how you thought to start a company based on this.
It is a bigger step from just being something that's helping a couple groups as opposed to starting a company. And my personality is an eternal optimist. I can always see the good and the future and the possibilities in really everything that I do every day. So for me, it was just keep moving forward, find another group, develop solutions with them. And the neat thing is the product is evolving and changing as we're doing that. So it was a natural progression. You start sending invoices out, you develop the company and kind of go from there.
What kind of problems were you hoping to solve when you started the company?
Yeah, for me, save time. It's the thing that nobody can get more of and everybody needs more of. So saving schedulers time was one of those things. When you see that you're solving problems and people are spending less time on doing their scheduling for their group, that's a huge benefit. And they can do more with that time with things that are a lot more important than staff scheduling. One of my old taglines was I said, my staff schedule is not for staff and it's not for scheduling. It's to save you time to do things that are a lot more important than staff scheduling.
And Krista, what did you think through all this once you expanded to the larger group and then starting a company? How is this all jiving with you? You're used to clinical practice. This is a new venture. Does it feel odd? Is it exciting? Is it interesting? What are your thoughts now at this point?
I mean, it was very interesting just to learn how different groups did their scheduling and how attached they had become to some of these that they couldn't see the bigger picture and how this was going to help them and help their group. For me personally, we used to do requests on paper and I would get stacks of paper to the point where I just would get a tick when I saw paper. And so I didn't want to see paper anymore. And when it wasn't paper, I would get a sporadic text from different people and have to go back and figure out who sent me this and when. And I just wanted a solution for that. I mean, the first year I was director, I had like 900 requests.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to deal with manually. And so this was a program that helped me a lot with that. And I knew if that was a problem for me, that had to be a problem for other people as well. And so I just thought this is a great solution. Everybody in anesthesia needs to be focusing on their patients and not so much on their scheduling. And so I thought this would be great for the community at large for everybody.
Well, and I'm interested to hear not only how the company's going, but how it's integrating newer technologies and accommodating all the needs of various groups. So, how is the company going so far? What has surprised you as the company has grown?
So one thing that surprised me is how scheduling is it's a very emotional thing for people. I mean, work-life balance is very important to this generation. It's not so much like my generation where we just worked. We worked the schedule that we had and you didn't try to move things around. You moved your life around your schedule. But Gen Z and millennials, they really want a work life balance. So it's very important for the schedule to be fair and transparent and easy to use and be able to have quick changes. And so that's something that surprised me is how emotional it can be for people with their schedules because that's their lives. That's how they're scheduling their lives.
I'd also like to add something else that probably surprised Krista, and that was that this was actually working, that we were actually making a business and creating something and solving problems in the same process. You know, something else, Dr. Stryker, that was surprising to me was that you get to a certain level of clients, they start giving you great feedback on the product. And you reach that point where it's like, this is great, but if you had this button that would do this feature, that would make this even better. And so there was a point, probably about 2 or 3 years into the business, where our clients were engaged in the solution that we had created. And they were giving us great feedback, not just an email asking for the feature, but you could kind of bounce ideas off of them. And, software development and architecture is not just like, I would like this button to do this thing. That's the way the request starts out. But what you try to do is figure out why they want that button and why they want it to do what they want it to do. A better question is to ask, what's your process like? And step outside of that question. What problem are you trying to solve? Why do you need the information that you need? And when you abstract those type of questions from your clients, there starts to be sometimes a lot of questions need similar data or need similar solution. So we try to abstract those suggestions and come up with generic solutions for all of them.
And Ricky, he loves to solve problems, he loves to create. And so this is just a natural extension for him. And so he's always looking for new ways to make this better, for new ways to make this have better functionality. He's constantly working on this. This is his baby.
This is our baby.
Yeah, it's our baby.
What challenges are you seeing in dealing with various organizations, such as ASCs versus hospitals versus smaller groups. From your perspective, what kind of challenges are involved with trying to scale this up or down or tailor it one way or another?
It's really the same thing. Everybody is having staffing shortages and everybody is trying to figure out a way to have their staff in the places that they need to be for the cases that are scheduled to be done. So everybody's feeling this staffing shortage and everyone's trying to get the most that they can with the people that they have. And so that's why it's important that they have a scheduling program that they can look at their different facilities. And if they need to change people around, if this is a light day at this place and a busy day at the other place, they can move people around and see that. Even though an ASC and a hospital are different, there's different complexity in cases, they still have the same kind of scheduling challenges.
And how does your background with being a CRNA play into all this? I imagine there's certainly a lot of value in that, but specifically, what have you noticed about that?
I can help Ricky with how people in anesthesia look at a schedule and what they're trying to solve and what they would like for it to do. So, knowing that and having that background and being someone that handles a schedule, I can work well with Ricky and we can look at the problems that people are going to have. And I can tell him that this is not what they're looking for. They would like something that solves this problem instead.
Ricky, with your experience with IT, how does artificial intelligence come into all this? Do you utilize artificial intelligence? Is that a tool that could be used but isn't necessary? How does that all work in today's environment with what's available?
Dr. Stryker, that's a great question. We do have an AI agent, but it's limited access for just some special clients that we're testing. Yes, absolutely. AI is eating the world. I saw on television a commentator say AI is eating software, but no, AI is eating the world and it's going to affect everything that we do forever. And you have to embrace the technology. And as a software company, as a developer, you have to look and anticipate what the future is going to hold and what people are going to ask for. We're working on three AI improvements, three phases. The first one's going to be what we're going to call an AI schedule importer. This is currently in development, and we're going to have this ready at the ASA conference in San Diego in a couple months. So we're excited to kind of deploy that. Basically, you're going to be able to drop in any kind of schedule in any kind of format. And within seconds, this is going to convert your schedule into a My Staff schedule. So you would be able to then invite users and some of your staff to see this schedule and to kind of play with the system and experience everything about My Staff schedule. So we're excited about that. A phase two would be what we call AI scheduling. And what would happen there is you would put in rules, natural language rules as to what the requirements are to have a full schedule. We need doctors covering call on the weekend. We need a late person every day. We need a call person every day. We need so many doctors to staff rooms, 10, per day. And then you put these natural language rules in, and you could edit those over time as the hospital grows, as there's changing requirements. You can change those rules on the fly. And then you just ask the system, you say, do the schedule for me for November and December. It looks at the previous schedule and starts building out the schedule with those requirements. That's probably something that we'll be able to get our teeth in probably the next 6 months. So we're looking forward to that. The third phase of kind of AI improvements for My Staff schedule would be what we call an AI scheduling agent. And it would use the second phase, but then it would also be able to detect request or PTO and then start actually reaching out to doctors, asking them if they can cover call for the weekend, that there's an opening, respond with a yes. Along the lines of negotiating, doing all those things that manual schedulers do could be done with an AI agent. So that's in the works. It's kind of whiteboarded at this time, but we think getting that to market will be a game changer for us.
And Krista, I imagine that improving groups scheduling making it easier to take some administrative tasks off a clinician's plates is a huge work satisfier. And we talk about on this podcast, certainly, and I know throughout the healthcare community, talk about burnout and how pervasive it is. Have you noticed that your work through the company has that affected groups in a positive way? A little bit of a loaded question, but I want to hear your take on what kind of difference it has made.
I think it's made some big differences because it allows people to be able to work their schedule around their lives. And then I can see that I have too many people on this day, so I can switch it around so that that person can go to what that is that they need to go to, their child's program at school or an award ceremony or something like that. So it's really important, like I said before, the work life balance so that it doesn't get to a point of burnout. And that's really what this generation looks at the most. So you have to grow, you have to move, you have to change, you have to realize what it is that is important to your staff, and you have to be able to figure out a way to try to help provide that.
Dr. Stryker, I'd like to add something to that.
Mhm.
So if you could imagine a schedule dashboard and within the days and the cells of the cross between the dates and the staff, you could see the request that that person has. And you could hover over the request and you could actually see the details of why that person needs to be off or why they need to swap. And then in addition to that, the top row header gives you a daily total. So this would be like your starts as well as your deficits. So in my staff schedule, you can put in your rules of how many people you need or how many people you're short. And so all of that information like on one page that's super easy to access. It's how somebody, one person, can handle 1,500 requests in a year because they can see all that information. They don't have to flip between different screens or run different reports to actually get that information.
And I can see that on my phone. So I anywhere that I am, if I'm in the grocery store and some request comes through, I can just look right there and look at it and fix it for them.
Excellent. And it's such a game changer with the information right at your fingertips.
Yes,
Well,
definitely.
I do want to ask because it's such an interesting dynamic. Work together as husband and wife while building a company. What are some things that has surprised the both of you or that you both learned from engaging in this project?
Well, we've been married for almost 36 years. So, not a lot of surprises for each other. But what I have learned is that I may think I know the answer, but I really just need to listen because what is right for me is not right for another group. And the way that we do things in my facility is not the way that they do things in another facility. So, listening is key and listening to the person to see what the problem is that they're trying to solve because a problem for them may not be a problem for me. And Ricky's very good at that. He's very good at listening and thinking ahead and trying to solve problems. Like I said, he loves to solve problems and create solutions.
Yes, I get a true enjoyment when somebody tells me that, we actually got an email recently and it was a new group and they had been in production a month and they said, we appreciate what you've done with this product. The detail and the attention that you paid on that shows. They said we were able to balance the schedule in 2 hours. And with our previous system, it took 2 weeks. So that was when it was new. I would imagine they could probably balance the schedule a lot faster now. So some things surprising to me is that you actually can stay married and build a software company, you know? It's been fun and we get to do this together. And, husband and wife team, we get to go to the conference. We'll be in San Diego. And I lean on Krista. I tell people at the conferences, I say, I'm not medical, Yeah, I get them to speak medical and talk about ASCs and then how it affects her because he's my number one client, how it benefits her, how it's such a time saver for them. So it's an interesting kind of sales pitch when you're trying to show the product to somebody. So
And I'm Ricky's number one fan, and I think he's a computer genius, and he can create anything and do anything. So people come and ask questions all the time of, can it do this? Can it do that? And I always say yes, because Ricky is a computer genius. You can do whatever you need.
It's a wonderful partnership. Well, before we wrap up, I want to give you a chance to share what you see as the top benefits of the product, your company, and tell our listeners where they can learn more about you and your company.
Yeah, sounds good. It's a time saver, what we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes. And it's a lot of things that, user friendly and intuitive. Customization, none of the thousands of schedules that we have are actually the same. They're all different. We have a we have a military schedule and they use X, Y, and A's and B's for their scheduling of their CRNAs. So that level of customization and it's all easy. The military, they never reach out to us for any questions. They just figure it out. They figure it out through the UI. And of course, US white glove support. I'll be on the front end of that, helping our users get acclimated, teaching them how to customize their schedule, helping them build their schedule.
And it's something that you don't have to make an appointment and wait weeks and weeks and weeks for. And it's not an added charge to what you're paying for the service anyway. I mean, it is a very personalized process.
Yeah, great points. Our website is mystaffschedule.com. There's a contact us button and you can click that and reach out. There's a form to fill out to respond and reach out. Also info@mystaffschedule.com. We can help you there. Please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to set up a demo and show you what we have.
That's all one word, mystaffschedule.com.
It is.
Okay.
We're all over the web, and so it should be pretty easy to find.
I just wanted to add that if you're coming to the ASA annual meeting in San Diego, we would love for you to stop by and visit us. We would love to hear your stories and hear what it is that you would like to fix about your scheduling. So
Bring
just-
us your problems for
Yeah.
sure.
I assume it'd just be set up in the exhibit hall.
That's correct. And we also want to say we're a very, very proud sponsor of ASA and to be an innovation supporter. So it's wonderful to be a part of the ASA group.
Well, thank you for supporting the ASA. Thank you for all the work you're doing. If any of our listeners have any interest at all in improving their scheduling or just want to talk to our guests or find out a little more about what their company does, I'm just going to repeat. That's mystaffschedule.com as the website or info@mystaffschedule.com for email. And if you're at the ASA this coming year in San Diego, please check them out. Please stop by the exhibit hall. To Ricky and Krista, thank you so much for sponsoring us. Thank you for sharing the information about your company, your experience, and your insights into how improving scheduling can be so impactful.
Thank you for having us and giving us this opportunity.
Absolutely.
My pleasure. And to our Central Line listeners, thanks again for joining us. Please don't hesitate to tell your colleagues about this episode or any other episode you find interesting. Please leave us a review and tune in again next time. Take care.
Subscribe to Central Line today, wherever you get your podcasts, or visit asahq.org/podcasts for more.